Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone in their respective Zoom-do boxes. It's a beautiful morning here at Hokioji. Beautiful mid-summer morning. I don't know if it's midsummer yet, but we'll call it that. Birds are chirping and the crickets as well. This morning we have Reverend Onryu Kennedy, and she's going to speak a little bit about life and death is the only matter, loving between the space. Reverend Kennedy was ordained in 2012 and received transmission. Oh, let me turn my original sound off. She was ordained in 2012 and received transmission in 2018 from Byakuren Judith Ragir in Katagiri Roshi's lineage. In 19 and 20, she attended Ango at Toshoji, and in 2017 at Tassajara. In the spring 2020, she was the Shuso there at Toshoji, and that's the head monk. And in 21, she received transmission from Reverend Eido Reinhart in Kosho Uchiyama's lineage. And she completed zuise in March of this year. Throughout her life, she has valued social justice work as an expression of her bodhisattva vow, and from 2010 to 21, she was one of the leaders at Clouds and Water Zen Center, and she co-coordinated to bring Fleet Maull to teach on Engaged Buddhism in 2013, and coordinated Interfaith Bearing Witness Retreat Conference in 2016, and Winyan Awanyankapi, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Protecting the Lifegivers Conference in 2019. She has an MA in counseling psychology and has worked with children and families for 22 years and recently completed a year-long training in Engaged Buddhism at Upaya Zen Center. Good morning, and please take it away for us.
Thank you, Dolden, for that wonderful introduction. It's great to see everybody. Good morning. I'd like to start with thanking Hokioji, the staff, the board, and all the volunteers and practitioners who have taken care of Hokioji and sustained it to this place and time. That has gravity for me. So I'm deeply grateful for everybody's practice and energy. I'd like to begin too by acknowledging that I am on Dakota and Anishinaabe land. I'm grateful for the care of this land by these nations. I offer homage to our Asian ancestors who gifted us with this beautiful practice called Buddhism. I offer homage to our ancestors, teachers, friends, and families for their patience and compassion and support. Also, I offer gratitude to all beings, including non-humans, the clouds, the trees, the birds, the coyotes, for the many gifts offered to me, especially in moments of uncertainty. I woke up this morning, thank goodness. And it was cooler. It was actually 2 degrees cooler in my house. I was like, this is so awesome for me. 2 degrees. I do want to acknowledge the heat that many humans and non-humans have been experiencing. I understand too that this heat again brings forward the disparities of people in our communities, specifically Indigenous, Black, and people of color, who many of our fellow beings are on what are called heat islands, which are anywhere between 5 and 10 degrees hotter than what I experience. Because of the cement, the asphalt, the lack of trees. So I want to bring that forward as something that needs our attention, our collective attention. So this talk, life and death is the only matter, loving between the space. It comes out of my experience in July. And if it feels a little dramatic to you or confusing, I'm okay with that, because it's been a little dramatic and confusing for me as well. So it's a koan for me. And I'm inviting us to explore together what this means. And again, I'm committed to talking a little, about a half hour, and inviting everybody in this virtual space-time, to bring their voice into the conversation. In the past, I've had on my Buddha altar this piece of paper that on it, I'm not sure, I cannot remember where I received these verses, whether it was from the Upanishads or one of our great yogis. And I'm sorry that I cannot remember. And I continue to look. But on this, the verse on this paper was something like, death is certain, the time is uncertain. What is the most important point? What if we lived with that awareness continuously? I'm going to bring in a lot of different voices into this conversation, and it may feel like I'm traveling in many dimensions with many different people, and it may seem scattered, but these voices are, they have something to offer, or that they had something to offer me recently. And the voice that I'd like to bring into this, another voice, is Tracy Chapman. She wrote a song called Change. And it's an awesome song. You know, what would it take to change? And I hear her voice at times throughout the day. I want to talk about one of the things that in our practice is our awareness of impermanence. There is certainty that life is impermanent. And how do we work with this impermanence? The certainty of impermanence offers the possibility of life unfolding and emerging in a very vivid and sometimes beautiful way. Can I change in flow in space-time? Can this flow be in relationship to arising conditions without urgency and without coming from scarcity? And I'm not talking, when I say without urgency, I'm not talking about lingering. This is something I've been exploring, because there are other voices out there too that are talking about how can we slow down to these conditions. Recently, I was a part of an interfaith panel to discuss the intersection of spiritual practices in the face of climate change. I would like to say too, that one of the things that in listening to people and talking about the current conditions of the climate and the heat crisis, there are some folks that are calling it that the earth has a fever right now. And how can we help, or what actions could we take to support the earth in these fever conditions? The question posed to us, what practices and teachings does our tradition, our faith tradition, have in serving humans, non-humans, in the earth, in the current climate conditions? What wisdom does our faith offer to the threats to humans, non-humans in this earth? If the question is expanded, what can we do? What does our faith tradition offer in this moment to humans, non-humans? And that includes ourselves. Another question that comes up is, how am I contributing to this crisis? If I investigate actions that may be contributing to this crisis, this awareness has the possibility of a pivot. How can I walk in a way that is more harmonious with all beings in this great earth? Maybe some of you have read the Diamond Sutra. The Diamond Sutra to me offers wisdom for me in my capacity to be as upright as I possibly can with this mind and these conditions, in this heart. This heart. Yeah, sometimes I forget about the heart. The translation that I use is Red Pines translation. And the question around what does Zen Buddhism have to offer humans, non-humans in this great earth, I think was a question that Subhuti asked the Buddha when he asked the Buddha, if a noble son or daughter sets forth on the bodhisattva path, how does a noble son or daughter stand? How should they walk? And how should they control their thoughts? Subhuti, with great compassion, asked this question to the Buddha on behalf of all beings. When we see suffering, compassion naturally arises. How do we stay with presence, with this mind, and sustain this presence of mind to what we are witnessing? What wisdom and skillful action can we bring forward in the face of what's arising? The Buddha replies. He's so happy too that Subhuti has asked this question, because Subhuti is asking it for all of us. Subhuti, those who would now set forth on the bodhisattva path should thus give birth to this thought. However many beings there are in whatever realms of beings may exist, whether they are born from an egg or born from a womb, born from water, or born from the earth, the air, whether they have a form or no form, whether they have perception or no perception, in whatever conceivable realm of being one might conceive of being, in the realm of complete nirvana, I shall liberate them all. The Buddha did not exclude any being in this path, in this vow. I mean, I'm like, he expanded it. It's boundless, it's inconceivable. And how beautiful, what it's so beautiful to me. A bodhisattva is a being who helps themselves and all beings. And we chant, beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. This is an inconceivable vow to attain. How wonderful. The mind and the ego has nowhere to land. How beautiful. And yet, we align with our vow and do what is to our capacity to relieve suffering for ourselves and all beings. And yet we try. We don't give up. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable to this ordinary mind. And yet we use this ordinary mind. Our delusions arise endlessly, and we make efforts to bring our awareness to them, to end them. With awareness, we have we have the possibility of pivoting, of seeing our delusions and then pivoting, possibly. Dharma gates are beyond our conceived bounds, and we do our best to study the teachings and practice to enter them. The Buddha's way cannot be exceeded, and yet we vow to practice endlessly to attain it. Okamura Roshi writes in Living in Vow, there is a contradiction inherent to these vows. We vow to do things that are impossible. This means that our practice is endless and that we cannot fulfill the 4 vows. I really like them. I don't know how it lands on you, but it lands pretty good on me. And I'd be curious to hear what you think. I want to go back to Subhuti. When the Buddha replies to Subhuti, the Buddha says, Subhuti, those who now set forth on the bodhisattva path should thus give birth to this thought. And I'll talk about that later, but that is a very important statement the Buddha made to Subhuti. And he made it to us as well. Living in vow is the invitation to align ourselves with the vow and to realize when we are being pulled by karma and realign ourselves with our vow. When I realize I am pulled by karma in a way that is not kind, with compassion and awareness, I bring myself back to my vow and offer repair. We chant because with vow there is atonement. That's the repair. And I'll admit I'm a recovering Catholic. And I think atonement is important, and not in the way that I was initially taught. Atonement is just, for me, it's repairing an action or a thought or an unkind word. And doing that in a concrete, real way, whether it's with a person, whether it's with a bug, whether it's with water. It doesn't matter the being or the non-being. What's important is that I acknowledge and I repair. In this atonement, we chant, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. That is an awesome chant. Because when I chant it, I'm addressing where in this mind-body complex I have done harm. And in that chant, I'm acknowledging through body, speech, words, thoughts, my mind, even my mind. I don't know about your minds, but my mind can be pretty aggressive sometimes. And I need to acknowledge that because I don't want, quite honestly, I want to untangle my aggressiveness. I want to untangle my violence. And I can't do that if I'm faking it and saying, oh, I'm not violent, I'm not aggressive, I'm not angry. So acknowledgement kind of sets me free, right? Not free in a way where it's reckless, but free in a way where I can think more clearly. And who doesn't want to think more clearly? And that's an awesome gift to offer myself in this world. Clarity, presence. So going back, it is profound that the thought of going back to Subhuti, right? Or what the Buddha says to Subhuti about setting forth on this path, and we give birth to this thought. It's profound that the thought of liberation preempts all other thoughts. I mean, we use this mind this thinking mind. It's an instrument, it's a vehicle to free ourselves and to free all beings. This is our bodhicitta, bodhi awakening, citta, mind. We arouse bodhicitta with our thinking mind. We don't get rid of our minds. I mean, I don't know how it was for you, but when I first came to Zen, I was thinking, I'm going to get rid of this mind. And if I get rid of this mind, I'm going to be liberated. Delusion, suffering. Oh man, I'm glad I untangled that to my capacity. The Buddha goes on to say to Subhuti, thus Subhuti, those who set forth on the bodhisattva path should give a gift without being attached to the perception of the object. That is wisdom too. We're not attached to our capacity as human beings. I don't know, maybe I'm not going to speak for you. I'll speak for myself. As a human being, I have egocentricity. I am self-centered, no doubt about it. And I'm working to untangle this self-centeredness. So to my capacity, we are not attached to the gifts we offer. Giver, just like in our meal chant, giver, receiver, gift, all empty. There is no object. There is no subject. This is what Suzuki Roshi calls leaving no trace. This is so beautiful, because I'm kind of into fire. When you do something, you should do it with your whole body and mind. You should burn yourself completely, like a good bonfire, leaving no trace of yourself. Or, this is quite beautiful too, if you're not into fire, maybe into flowers. I am into both. Or what Uchiyama Roshi means by blooming our life force naturally. He offers us the example of the lilies blooming in the field. The lilies are not growing for a particular purpose. It blooms because it has given life, or it blooms because it has been given life. They are simply manifesting their life with all their might. I'm like, wow, how beautiful. You go, lilies. I want to be just like you. For me to have a chance at non-attachment and offer this life force naturally is with Zazen. This practice turns me inside. It invites me to bear witness to my habit patterns and the centering ways of self. This invitation to see, it's right view, one of the 8 ways on the noble path, offers the possibility of untangling the tangling of selfing. Though there is no object in Zazen, within the silence, I often see the endless way the mind moves in space-time. Lastly, this is important. So I'm going to take another 10 minutes. Lastly, I would like to speak to interconnectedness, or what the Dalai Lama calls interdependency. I was watching a talk by Professor Ruth Ben Gant. The talk was provoking to me. What struck me the most was her illustration of power. And whoopsie, oh, here we go. I did my own crude illustrations from her talk. If you want to check her out, it's Ruth, she's a professor, Ruth Ben -Ghiat. She talked about centralized and distributed power. She talked, and this is what it looked like. This is centralized power. All the energy is going to the center in supporting the center. Then she talked about distributed power. The power is distributed throughout the nodes. She also stated, which I thought for me was a great teaching, that centralized power cannot support the weight of the collective and will eventually collapse. Whereas the distribution of power has inconceivable manifestations and possibilities, though often more dynamic and messier and more complex. The beauty and power of interconnection is in the unknown and the known connections we have with each other and all beings in this great earth. There are many things that we don't, oh, I can't speak for you, sorry. There's many things I don't know. And when they're revealed to me, I'm like, oh my word, you're kidding. That's amazing. And I'll share an example with you later. This includes the clouds, the animals, trees, all creatures, and dust motes. Interconnectedness is a lived experience in our tradition. The more we are connected, the less isolated and separate we feel. In Buddhism, there is an image of Indra's net to describe our interconnectedness. And Okamura Roshi often uses this as well. Imagine galaxies of nodes, each node connected to all others by a filament. Each node is an individual and simultaneously a whole universe. Each node affects all other nodes. Because each node is connected to all and each and every other node, it is not separate. We are all connected in this inconceivable net that is beyond our ordinary mind's imagination. There are possibilities here and now to take care of ourselves and each other, all beings in this great earth. There are domains of reality that are beyond this ordinary mind. Or, as David Bohm states, I'm not a physicist, but he talked to me through his words. Everything is interrelated. Each part of the cosmos contains the whole universe and unfolds into our reality. I'm like, that is, that's awesome. Lately, I've been practicing just sitting by the river, noticing and letting go of habituated patterns. I'm not free. That's why I go there. Opening to the wind, moving through the trees, witnessing the shapes and colors of the clouds, the sounds of the birds, in particular, the eagle. If you've ever heard the song of the eagle, it's a blessing. Bringing awareness to my feet resting on the ground. This is what Uchiyama calls opening the hand of thought, allowing thoughts to come and go without clinging, allowing the activities of clouds, wind, birds to come and go. I sit with the natural world, to my capacity, sitting with uncertainty and the unknown. From wisdom and interconnectedness, love organically emerges. This is radical and is revolutionary. Working together without our egocentricity driving the process. This is not simple, and it's complicated to embody this in our daily lives. There's a person that recently I have been listening to too, Trisha Hersey, Hersey. Some people call her the Bishop of Sleep. It's a profound practice, what she's advocating for. It's really moving away from the grind and embodying something bigger as a result of rest. And what I find interesting about her view is that on the surface, getting sleep seems simple, but it's very complicated to arrange one's life in a way where one can actually rest and sleep. I want to talk about just briefly an example recently of this process of the individual being liberated within the collective. Because I think what I've experienced in our culture is that the individual, it's all about the individual. If the individual is free, the collective is free. And I think in the paradigm that I'm studying and investigating, it's about the network, the larger network, and what is my position within that network. And if the network is free, I am free. And if I'm free, the network is free. So there's this exchange going on. It's not one or the other. Recently, a friend of mine died, and she died unexpectedly. And I hadn't reached out to her since COVID. And her spouse called me or her spouse emailed me and said that she had passed. I was blown away. This is a person who, like many of us, they practice, they study, they eat well, they take care of themselves. And I asked her spouse, I said, what happened? And her spouse was like, we think it was a heart attack. She went to the store to purchase a computer. She's kind of a tech person. And when she was at the Apple store waiting, she slumped over. And they came over to her and took her pulse, tried to assess her, and she didn't come back. And they called the ambulance, and she was at Southdale. So they took her over to Fairview, and she was gone. I was like, it took my breath away. I'm like, wow. And then her spouse asked me, would you speak? Would you speak at her celebration of life? I was like, yeah, I'll speak. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'll be present. And I was like so uncertain. And this whole thing was so unknown. Even the space in which the celebration was to happen, I had never been there before. And I went there, and I went there as a Zen priest. I went with the permission of the family. I was there in my Dharma position within the context of this celebration. I was one person in this large community who were expressing their love for this person. And I was struck. I was struck with how this person intersected in space-time with each of us, individually and collectively. It was a profound teaching for me. So, yeah, I'm like, I have this breath in this moment. And yet, in the back of the mind, there is a knowing too, an unknowing, that death will happen to all of us. We just don't know the time. And how do I want to live? I want to love. I want to love in an authentic way. So I just offer that. And thank you. I went a little over my time. I want to thank you for your presence and listening. And I want to open it up to invite you to bring your voices into the circle, into this conversation.
Thank you, GD. We can open it up for comments, questions. I really appreciated, I appreciate your open-heartedness, and the way that you present your talks. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend. On I guess a different note, what kind of struck me was the Bishop of Sleep. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that.
Okay. I want to say, please check her out, because she's a Black activist who has, her teaching comes out of her experience at a divinity school that she attended. And what she talks about is that to really take care of oneself and not produce, because in our capitalistic white supremacy system, it's all about producing. It's all about the grind. And she's coming from the white supremacy as a Black person whose ancestors worked on the plantation, where it was all about producing, and to the point of death. And the capitalistic system didn't care about the person. And they really didn't care about the body either. The body was just a vehicle to produce, to make money. So from her view, it's radical to sleep, because sleep is about stepping outside of the paradigm of producing, of being part of the grind. And I think Okamura Roshi also talked about this in his video of opening the hand of thought, that one of his things that as a young man in Japan that he resisted was, it was all about the machine. It was all about making money. It was all about producing. And he was, even like schools, he said, schools here too was a factory for the system to produce. So to sleep, to step outside of the paradigm and sleep and rest and take care of is really a radical act. And I apologize that I cannot articulate it more the way she did. So I just invite you to Google her. She's got some really, is that her book? Yeah, she's got a book. You want to say something, Shodo?
Sure. So when you started talking, you mentioned her name, and then you started talking and went, oh, I bet it's that one. So my boss loaned me this book for whatever reason. It's titled Rest is Resistance, and it probably says something that I've only gotten halfway through it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But I also remember when I was training with him in Bloomington, Indiana, I was sort of part of an activist community there. And I had to make the decision that if something was happening at the temple, I was at the temple. And this would be really hard because there were really interesting things happening. But once I said to him, actually just being here in a 5-day sesshin looking at the wall and not being part of whatever it was is itself an act of resistance, or however you want to frame it. And you know, they had this great arts event every year, and I never went to it because it was always during sesshin. but it was like it helped me order my life to say this is first.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing
Thank you.
your voice into the circle. In the book too. Man, synchronicity, it's everywhere.
GD, can I make an offering?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm out here in northeastern Colorado. It's wonderful to
Oh,
connect. I also lost a dear friend just a few weeks ago. My friend Dave was one of my dear midlife friends. And I just thank you for saying more about Tricia Hershey and the resistance. My friend Dave worked in outdoor retail, meaning he worked for like REI and Marmot Mountain Works. But he was also a cog in the machine, you know, and he suffered from depression. And perhaps unsurprisingly, he died in his home without anybody knowing. And so it really hits home. You're sharing about your friend in the computer store and the unexpected nature of the arrival of death, even with people who take care of themselves. And, you know, like Dave taught telemark skiing to people because he loved to share, you know, and a lot of the people that worked in that circle, they were doing their own form of resistance, which was to get outside of the commodification of human beings and stuff, and actually go into nature and then inspire other people to do this, to go beyond our ego and our machine system. And, you know, I can't connect all the threads, but they're here in my heart. And I love that you drew the picture of the nodes. I held it up for us, the Indra's web. I'm still just sort of making space in my heart for my friend. And today, now that I'm home, I put his name on my altar. But thank you for all your reflections and your sharing. Thank you so much.
I just want to respond and say I'm sorry about your friend too. It's unexpected and yet it's expected. So yeah. Thank you very much.
Say, GD, this is Shinko Marilyn Kamen here.
Hi.
Nice. Thank you so much for such a deep and thought-provoking Dharma talk. I have a factual question or clarification. You mentioned an author whose name was spelled Ghiat.
Oh.
And I hate to admit this to this group, but I went online during your Dharma talk and I looked up her name. Is it Ruth Ben-Ghiat?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because I see, well, here I am reading. I just have to, I was so taken by that particular piece of your talk. It says that Ruth Ben-Ghiat is an American historian and cultural critic. She is a scholar on fascism and authoritarian leaders. She's a professor of history and Italian studies at NYU. So I was confused by the name reference, and I thought maybe the group would appreciate the clarification.
Yes. You just outed me.
Well, I'm sorry, I went online during your Dharma talk, but
Fine. The Dharma is vast and subtle, and it's a slippery slope. So I'm like, at this point, I go outside to really, what voices out there can really kind of give some words to what is actually happening and some wisdom. So, yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, anyway, no, thank you. It really, you can tell it caught my attention. So thank you. And thank you for the talk again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, I'm Paula. I'm sorry I can't see you.
Hi, Paula.
Thank you so much for your, yes, it's some just very authentic and real, and where you're being called in your life, what speaks to you. But I had this experience. I'm a caregiver for an elder man, and we often walk around his house. He lives in a very beautiful setting, and we sit down afterwards and we just kind of take in the view. And he fell asleep, and I didn't want to bother him. And I noticed that I couldn't really, the view, it's probably like, I don't know, 240 degrees. I couldn't really take it in fully. I couldn't, it was so beautiful, but yet I couldn't take it in. And then I kind of meditated while he was sleeping. And I noticed that, I don't know, it really opened up my perception a lot. That as I settled, I could take in the view. And I almost feel maybe not right about saying take it in. I could receive it, and I don't know. I just thought that was kind of an interesting experience that I had. So I wanted to share that. And I want to thank you too, because sometimes I love being a caregiver, and it's a very low stress, very organic, responsive kind of job. And I can see that, as a culture, it's not like highfalutin kind of job, and me valuing, as I'm gotten older, I value that taking care in the simplest, gentlest, low stress way. So I just want to add that. I appreciate your talk.
Thank you, Paula. That's beautiful. And you just offered us a gift by your process of how initially you couldn't see this view. Then once you settled, the view opened.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. Our culture does not support caregivers. And
Thank you again.
thank you. We have about a minute if anybody would like to bring their voice into the circle before we close. Just breathing with all of you too. It's wonderful.
So I'm just glad to be here. I don't have anything brilliant to say. I was trying to think of something I would say or ask a question, but you went many places. And so I am just happy to be here and so glad I came.
So glad to see you too. I'm so glad to see all of you.
Yes, I want to see you again. You're getting an email.
All right. Thank you so much, ED. That was great. It came up earlier this week. I just want to add a passage in the Eihei Koroku says, in the morning I eat gruel, for lunch I eat rice. Feeling strong, I practice Zazen. When tired, I sleep. So, coming up this week, we have Or no, coming up events for Hokyoji. Next week, our Reverend Kyoku Whalen is speaking, and events at Hokyoji on the 13th. We have Family Weekend. And then the 19th through the 26th, the Jewel Mirror Session, still some opening slots to come and practice with us for a week here with our guiding teacher, Dokai Georgeson, and my teacher, Daigaku Rumei, and Rayron Gumbel from the Milwaukee Zen Center. On the 28th through the 4th, we have the Compassionate Ocean Zen Center. They have their week-long session. And then going forward, we have several other events with MZMC and a Just Sitting retreat. So all that good stuff. We got a bunch of stuff going on this fall. If you want to get involved, we love visitors. Come and stay with us. Come hang out. Check us out on our social media and all that good stuff. And we are entirely supported by your generosity. Just being here and participating in these talks is most excellent. If you want to go further than that, we have ways to do that on our website, and there is a link in the chat that's been posted now for that. Again, I want to thank GD for this morning, and thank you all for being here. And we can close with the 4 vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thanks, y'all.